I apologize about the background, by the way. Okay.
Oh, no worries. Hi, this is S.J. Thomason, and I am with G-Man, the legend. So I've got G-Man on my line with me, and we're going to talk about a debate that he just had recently with Shannon Q on the Modern Day Debate channel. And so, G-Man, would you like to introduce yourself before we get talking about that?
Yeah, sure. For those of you who don't know me, as SJ already said, my name is G-Man. I have a channel called G-Man. I call my ministry Preaching to the Choir Ministries. I have a long history with the atheist community. I've debated a lot of them. I've called the atheist experience on about 4 or 5 times. I've changed a lot of the things that goes on in this community. I'm very proud of it, and led a lot of people to Christ out of atheism. And I still go back and forth with them. I have an anti-atheism show on GTV. I go after the science on GTV, and of course, I preach the gospel of Jesus Christ to them on a regular basis. So.
Wow, I didn't realize you did. I didn't realize you haven't, because I know you're GTV, because that's how I got a hold of you. But I didn't realize you were doing that kind of stuff too. So how long would you say
Mhm.
how long you've been around doing this kind of stuff?
Since around 2010.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that's significant. I sort of got into it just a few years ago. So you've
Yeah, I've
been
been,
in
I've been
this.
I've been doing this for a minute. Yeah.
So where can people can find you obviously on your channel here on YouTube, and I'm going to link that if I haven't yet in the description. But also, are there any other places that you go? I know you're not on Twitter. I haven't seen you there at least.
No, my primary place right now is YouTube. I am thinking about going over to a different format, but you can go on Blog Talk Radio. I debate the Hebrew Israelites on a platform called Debate Talk for You on Blog Talk Radio. You can find me there. But most of the time, I do things on my G-Man channel or my GTV channel.
Okay, great. And so, yeah, and you're very active on your channel too. I noticed that you were on there, I think just a couple days ago. I think you were on there yesterday too. So I'm starting to get the alerts whenever I see you're on there. So it sounds like you're
Hmm.
pretty active. So, and you've built up a pretty good following too.
Yes, yes. For a long time, I dealt with the atheist community, and then I kind of got away from them, and I started dealing with the Hebrew Israelites. So I'm building a new audience with that too. The atheist community, how can I put this? They like to laugh at my stuff, the stuff on my channel, and they like to make fun of it. But every last one of them have to admit that the points that I bring up are valid, and a lot of them can't deal with them. And it's not just me; it's people like you, S.J. Thompson, like True Empiricism, and other people that's here online too.
Yeah, so that's great. So it's a lot of times it's good because I think there's a big problem sometimes in the United States, and I was noticing this before getting onto social media, but I noticed that there's a lot of people are kind of apathetic towards God. And I think that this whole thing that you're doing and that I'm trying to do too, I think just getting out there and making noise and sometimes just getting people's attention and saying, wait a second, you need to pay attention to this. There's something going on here. It's not just something that you can just sit back and let the world go by without taking any notice.
Exactly, exactly. And we need people to do things a little bit different than the traditional way when you're dealing with atheists, because atheists will take advantage of what you believe by telling you, look, I can attack you, I can brutalize you, but you got to come across as being a certain way. Sometimes it is necessary to show the atheist community, look, I'm saved, I'm washed with the blood of Jesus Christ. But you know what I mean? If you engage in a debate with me, and I see you committing illogical fallacies, I'm going to point them out. I'm going to show you why you're wrong, and I'm going to do it a certain way. But I'm not going to be sinful about it. But I will do it a certain way to get my point across. And I believe that the atheist is just one of a bunch of groups out there that are coming after Christianity, specifically Christianity. It's very rare to hear atheists talk about Islam or talk about the New Age movement or Satanism or Luciferianism or anything like that. They're specifically coming after us. And I try to make a lot of noise about that myself too. About, look, they're just coming after us. Wake up. You know what I mean? You got to open up your mouth and say something. Don't befriend them, minister to them, evangelize them, you know?
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I think that goes in with something Hugh Ross said one time. Hugh Ross is a writer who's also an astronomer. I think that's his title. He has a PhD in astronomy, I believe, and he writes a ton of books on Genesis and things like that. But one of the things he said is he noticed that a lot of times when people talk about this, when they try to look into things like into other dimensions, the focus is always on Christianity. It's not on different religions. So the idea that, for example, people saying they want to get out a Ouija board and try to communicate with the dead and that kind of thing, a lot of times the response or what they're doing is going after Christians in some of these cases. Not that the Christians are in that dimension, just saying instead that there's people who've said that they've had encounters in that dimension or with what they call like alien encounters or UFOs or that kind of thing. A lot of times there's an animosity towards Christianity. So.
Exactly, exactly. And the atheists seem to be okay with Roman Catholicism. They seem to be okay with like Satanism, Luciferianism, and the occult and those things. They just want to get rid of Christianity. And one of the things I like to repeat over and over and over on my channel, SJ, is that they love this. They like to say religion. They want to get rid of religion. They want to get rid of religion. No, they don't. They want to get rid of Christianity, and they're very specific about what they want to get rid of. You know what I mean? Especially people who take the Bible literally.
I think so too, because I never see him going after Hindus or Buddhists or anyone like that. Do you notice that? You might
I
point out
notice that a
Muslims.
lot. Yeah.
I have seen a few of them going after Muslims here and there, but I've never really noticed any going after Hinduism or Buddhism.
Can you name 10 YouTube channels that are atheists that have done it on a consistent basis? Because I can't.
I can't name one that's gone
I can't.
after. I can't. That's so
I can name
crazy.
maybe 3, but I can't name 10. I can name 3, but I can't name 10.
So tell us how, before we start with talking about the Shannon Q debate that you had, how did that come about? So you two debated on morality and whether people are more moral than God. So how did that all happen?
I contacted James because I have his phone number and everything and whatnot, and I asked him. I said, "Look, can you get me somebody to debate on the topic of on is man more moral than God?" Because I listen to Matt Dillahunty a lot. I study him. I listen to him, and I'm preparing myself ultimately for a debate because by faith I believe he's going to accept one day. I can't prove it, but I believe by faith he's going to accept one day. But I listened to him speak, and I listened to a couple of other atheists speak, and I said, you know what? I called James up and I said, just get me somebody to debate me on for this particular topic. And then he told me that it was going to be a Shannon Q, and of course I didn't turn that down. So
Interesting. So, why didn't you bring up questions coming in from the audience here? We got a few people watching, and Travis Lee asks, why didn't you bring up the Sermon on the Mount in the debate?
What was Shannon Q?
Yes.
James asked me, and James is the owner of the Modern Day Debate channel. For those of you who don't know, I was asked to be nice, and it wasn't really a debate; it was a discussion. And a lot of times, I've learned this about modern day debate. You only got but so much time to speak, so I can't like bring up all those things unless it's a debate format, and I'm going to get talked for 20 minutes straight. You know what I mean? So
That makes
sorry
sense.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were doing a back and forth, and so what would you say is the final outcome of that debate? What did you two decide, in your opinion?
I don't know about what the two of us have decided, but I know this much. I thought Shannon Q was being very deceptive in the sense that she came across as saying, well, I don't have an opinion about this. You know what I mean? She don't have an opinion about whether or not morality is objective or subjective. But when we start talking about this, I'm going to show you that that's a bunch of baloney, that she actually does have a strong opinion about this. And some atheists like herself and like maybe Negation of P, they come across as being nicer, but these people will use a passive aggressive approach towards you where they're being nice to you. And what they're trying to get you is to tell on yourself. They get you to talk about it so they can get you so that they can be put in a position where they can just deny everything. And that wasn't going to work in this discussion. And I think what came out of it is that once again, atheists have been shown not to have any basis for the morality, no matter what tactic they use. They have no basis for it whatsoever to talk about the topic.
I agree. Actually, Shannon has told me before that she does believe in objective morality, and I've debated a number of different people who actually do believe in objective morality who are atheists, and so they have their way of grounding it. So I want to mention that before we go on, if you're okay with that. Are you okay with what they?
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so here's from my perspective, if there is objective morality, meaning a standard against which we can judge all of our actions, there has to be a source for that objective morality, and the source has to be transcendent to cultures, eras, and generations, because we have the same standard that's transcendent to cultures, eras, and generations. And so if there's a standard that's transcendent, it can't be part of us. And so it can't be the idea that we're going to set a goal, because that's what they do. They use consequentialism to try to ground it. So what they do is they say, well, we all have this goal that we want to maximize well-being. So therefore, the goal itself must also be the grounding. And that doesn't make any sense. It's not logical. It's very circular. And so I argue against that. And I think it's a very strong argument. And I can provide tons of academic global studies that show that we do have these objective moral values and duties. And there's a desire within all of us that we have this conscience that we know we should follow the golden rule. And that's across all religions and atheism and humanism. So I
Right.
think we can make a really strong case if they believe in objective morality. Now, there's some who say that it's all relative, but then you say, well, let's go back and can we say it was actually wrong what Hitler did to the Jewish people? And so I think,
Yeah, let me just get this out the way right now before we go any further. Every atheist that's watching this and that will watch this in the future, and they don't like it when I say this, but it's true. Every last one of them believe in absolute moral values. Every last one of them, and you're right about that. They do have objective moral values. The only difference is that our objective moral values come from God, and their objective moral values come from themselves. They're their own final authority when it comes to them their moral standards. You know what I mean? None of them. As a matter of fact, you know what? The atheist that comes to you and they say to you that God is immoral for condoning slavery. Now we know that that's a meaty topic and there's a lot of things to talk about regarding that, right? But the very
right.
fact that they said that, and that's an absolute claim, shows that they have objective morals. You know what I mean? That's not subjective. That's not their opinion. They absolutely believe that. When they say that God is immoral for, I don't know, condoning rape, which he does not do in the Bible, he punishes people who do that. The bottom line is they absolutely believe that. So that's objective to them, not subjective to them. So many of these atheists, they like to do what I like to call word salad. They like to play word games, and they try to switch the meanings of definitions to confuse everybody. Okay, if there are absolute right and wrongs, then God has to exist. You know what I mean? That's why they like to argue, for morality to be subjective and to be relative. You know what I mean? Because they want to get away from dealing with an absolute moral lawgiver. You know what I mean? But all of them believe it. And they can't get away from it, especially when they criticize God about something. All you got to do is follow up and say, well, is that absolute? Yes or no?
Good points. Yeah,
Conversation over after that.
I agree with you. And so there are some atheists who, I just mentioned a bunch of them who believe in this objective morality, and a lot of them use the same theory, like we mentioned, as Sam Harris. But there are some atheists, as you're mentioning, who are relativists, like Skylar Fiction is one of them. He just said that on Twitter today. There's other ones like Richard Dawkins, and so they're the ones where you say, well, if I steal your wallet, how are you going to say that's wrong? It's your opinion that it's wrong. My opinion is that I want to steal your wallet.
I'll tell you this though. Try going to a police officer and telling the police officer that stealing is a matter of opinion, and watch what happens. They're still going to lock you up. So, oh, is your opinion okay? Is your opinion to steal? Great, you're still going to jail. You know what I mean? They're just arguing like that because they want to get away from the idea about God. That's why a long time ago, actually, I stopped listening to them when they said that they wanted evidence for God. I stopped listening to them a long time ago. Why? Because they'll ask for the evidence and then they'll stack the deck against you. They want you to use science when they already admit to you that science is not a good way to go about determining whether or not the supernatural actually is real or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just one example. And they're just so intellectually dishonest. It's not even funny.
It is. It's interesting. I mean, I can say that I think there are some. I think we can't say they're all the same. There's definitely a variety of different types out there, and I think that some
Right.
I think some are just sort of lost. Like I look at Cy Gart, and he was an atheist for many years, and he was raised as an atheist. But in the back of his mind, he said, now looking in hindsight, he realizes how he was just God had been sending him signs, but he wasn't seeing them. And so I think you have to also remember there's those kinds of atheists too. Sarah
No, I
Salviender,
agree.
she's
I
a
agree.
Christian scientist who also had so they're different ones. So I think we're used to ones like Matt Dillahunty that you're watching, who definitely is rather more of an anti-theist versus say an atheist. So I think
No, I
they're
totally agree. I totally agree.
and Aaron Ra. Do you ever listen to him?
Oh God, Mr. Assertions. Yes, I listen to Raw. The guy who just says it's true because he thinks it's true. He doesn't back it up with nothing. To this day, I've never seen him actually prove anything. Anything.
Oh my
He
gosh.
just talks and talks and talks, and the atheist respects that. And I thought they respected evidence. But it is what it is. But I noticed that you brought up Scholar Fiction. Scholar Fiction claim to fame on YouTube is to constantly talk about the Moabites, right? Or I think it's the Moabites, where God told the children of Israel to go kill all the men, women, and children there. It's like, what did the children do? What did the children do and whatnot, right? And that's his claim to fame, while claiming to be a subjectivist, right? Well, objectively, he believes that God is a monster for doing that.
It's
That's
true.
not
It's
subjective.
true.
That's objective.
So there's a conflict right there. And also
Right.
I think people, when they look back at that, I listened to a girl I have heard on my show before, but she's called Lisa Quintana, and she's a Christian. And she actually wrote a really good paper on that. And she talked about blood retribution. And if you allowed, like, for example, when they killed the Canaanites and they killed everyone who was in Canaanite land who had not already fled, some people might say, oh, what if there were children there? Well, then they would have been killed too. And one of the things behind that was they all believed in blood retribution. So when those children would grow up, they'd come back and hunt them down. So that's one of the things that's rather challenging in that environment. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch screens right now and try to get their screen right in front of us. So hold on one second here. Hey, why is that not letting me?
You want to know why conversations like that is challenging with some people? It's because of the appealing to emotion. If we look at it from the societal from the society in which these things happen, it's a little easier to stomach, and it's easier to understand why they did the things that they do. Like, for example, America dropped the atomic bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. A lot of Americans, because of what happened over there in Pearl Harbor. You know what I mean? A lot of people was happy over here because they wanted the war to end already. You know what I mean? And nobody's complaining about that. And I'm sure a lot of children died when that happened. You know what I mean? So a lot of them are not being culturally fair on these topics, as we're going to talk about when we get to Shannon Q soon.
Yes.
In that conversation.
So I'm just trying to get the screen in front of me. Okay, can you see this screen that I have in front of me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm trying to, hold on one second. I want to make sure I've got the volume so that you can hear the volume from the computer, share computer sound. There we go. Okay, so I'll go ahead and like this. Looks like I haven't liked it yet. Okay, so here we go. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. I just started it right when Shannon starts talking, and I was thinking we probably won't have time to go through the whole thing because it's an hour and a half. But so I maybe skip a few parts, but maybe start off, and then I'll pause it, and you and I can have some commentary. And if you want me to pause it at any point, just say, "Hey, I got something to say." So here we go.
All right, cool.
Awesome. Okay, I'm really excited about this conversation. Discussing morality is one of my favorite things to do. And one of the reasons for that is I feel as though I'm still kind of in the exploratory stage of me finding a firm footing on my position regarding morality. So having these discussions helps me kind of
pause it.
Okay.
That's
okay.
Yeah, the reason why I wanted you to pause that, Eshe, was because this is where she tries to build the whole passive aggressive thing and whatnot, which she's saying that she's exploring it, she wants to learn more about it, and I believe that's a bunch of baloney. I believe that she has her definite opinions, and we're going to see that as we go on in this conversation. So I just wanted to point that out.
Well, I will mention she was a co-host on a debate I did a couple of years ago with Richard Carrier on objective morality, and she's been following objective morality for a long time. So actually, she also was on one when I Prophet of Zod. So I was also with her and Prophet of Zod on another chat on objective morality. So again, so we'll listen. Here we go.
All right.
Perspectives are and figure out what weight certain things should have. So I was interested in having this discussion with G-Man. I was glad that he asked for the discussion because looking at whether or not humans are more moral than God puts us in a position where we have to establish a moral standard in order to even make that sort of measurement. And that's a good exercise to go through, I think, when you're doing these sort of things, is figuring out exactly what a moral standard is. So in order, you need to be able to quantify it in order to make a careful assessment. So I'm looking forward to G-Man kind of laying out what God's morality.
Can you pause that again?
Okay, so I'm pausing it right now.
Yeah. So we're going to see this later on in the discussion that I had with Shannon Q. Shannon, I don't know if you noticed this, SJ, or not, but she tried to switch the burden of proof on me. You know what I mean? I know as an atheist, a lot of them believe that we are more moral than God. Because obviously, we'll see later on in this that she disagrees with a lot of the actions of God. Because, we human beings would never do anything like that, which is not true. But it's important to point that out, that she tried to switch the burden on me, because if there is no base, according to Shannon in her own brain or whatever, if there is no basis to judge God, then there's no argument, which doesn't make sense for a whole bunch of reasons. But I needed to point that out because when we started getting into this, you're going to see how she tries to do that throughout the show. And I picked up on it, and that's why I started answering her questions a certain way.
Okay, interesting. Well, let me ask you this: if I had to say there's a foundation, and that's her big thing, and I asked her the question towards the end. I was asking her about grounding it in consequentialism. But if we had to come up with a foundation or a standard of goodness, it's basically just the idea of goodness and love and mercy and forgiveness and all of those wonderful things that God is. So,
exactly.
Okay, so here we go. Let's listen again.
And seeing, I guess, if he lives up to his own standards or if humans exceed his standards, and if so, why? Like what metrics we use to figure these sorts of things out. Is that fair, G-Man? Does it, like, did I articulate that well enough?
Yeah, that's fine. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right.
So what I'm really interested in, if you're willing to kind of take the talking stick, would be, what is God's standard of morality? So if you had to define God's morality, if you had to say, you know, God's morality is this, and define it so that we have the metric, that we have the bar by which we're judging the conversation topic on, how would you define it?
Let me pause for a second there. I think using Jesus Christ, he sent Jesus Christ down so we could have the metric against which we can judge our own actions. We have a character, a person that we can actually look at his actions, look at how he treated others, look at the laws that he gave us, look at how bold he was and how courageous he was, and also how obedient he was. And so I think that we can just look at him as our standard. And so that's just my opinion. But G-Man, did you want to comment on this?
No, I agree with you. And we can look at 1 Corinthians 13 and look at the definition of love. And we can also look at, God's love, his holiness, and just his character as a whole, and compare that with humanity. And God's always going to come out on top. You're totally right about that.
Yeah. Love is patient. Love is kind. Is that the one?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah. And then there's 2 verses in the Bible. Unlike the Quran, there's 2 verses in the Bible that basically say God is love. So,
hey, SJ, check this out. Man is kind. Man is patient. Man is long suffering. Is that true? By nature, please.
No, that's so true. Yeah, we can't replace man. Actually, I think you just finished off this debate. We can quit this right now. All right, so here we go. Let's go on.
All right.
Okay. From a Christian perspective,
Yeah.
I would say that the standard is us. I'm sorry, not us. I'm sorry. The standard is God himself. It's his very nature. He is the standard.
Agreed.
God is the epitome of everything that we understand about love. God is the epitome of everything that we consider to be honest. God is the epitome of everything that we would consider to be good or wholesome or whatever. You know what I mean? All the values that we consider good, at least universally anyway. So he's actually the standard. And the only way a person can prove that God is being immoral if you show how he goes against his own nature. For example, God tells the children of Israel to worship him exclusively. God tells the children of Israel to be loyal to their spouse and to be loyal and to be loyal in all of their affairs. If you can show where God is not actually doing that, then you can show where he's being immoral. So he's actually the standard. He's the standard bearer. If you can show where God has lied, if you can show where he has been contradictory in his behavior, then you have an argument that he's immoral. But based on my conversations with people who believe that human beings are more moral than God, none of them has been able to do that, except for offering their own opinions.
Okay, that's fair. So I'm going to ask a couple exploratory questions just to kind of nail it down a little bit further, if that's okay. So you say if God contradicts his own standards, then he would be immoral because he is like the gold standard. So he's the bar which is set. So we're assuming that essentially like God's nature equals morality for the purpose of this conversation regarding morality. But what I heard you say, and this is where some of this stuff becomes confusing for me when I'm trying to establish what morality is.
Stop right there.
There we go.
One of the things that I don't understand why atheists don't get is that before there was anything, there was God. So that should not be difficult for them to understand. If everything, and I mean everything, began with God, then it should make rational, logical sense that morality would come from God. You know what I mean? But I don't know. In their brain somewhere, they believe that it is not the creator, but it's the creation that is the epitome of morality. That makes zero sense whatsoever.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. And so, yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, I think when you look into science, I think a lot of scientists are coming closer to God because there's, as Eric Metaxas has said, science is increasingly making a case for God. And when you look at the human genome, when you see there's 3.5 billion perfectly ordered, what they call letters, that in itself says that there's a code. There has to be a coder, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to move us. Here we go.
Do you determine what God's nature is? Is it things that he says? Is it things that he does? Is it things that were revelation through other people? But by what metric do you determine his nature?
Well, you gotta look at it this way. There's objective morality and then there's subjective morality. Objective morality says that there's an absolute moral standard. God is our absolute moral standard because in the eyes of a Christian, God is everything that we consider to be wholesome and pure and good, as I said earlier. Subjective morality deals with a person's individual opinions, that their morality is based on what that particular individual thinks, and it doesn't, and it doesn't matter what other people think. It's just that individual's opinion. You know what I mean? So when we're talking about testing to see whether or not God is consistent with his nature, we can look at what he says and we can look at what he does. And it should all come back objective and not subjective.
Okay, so we're going to assume for the remainder of the conversation then that the morality that we're discussing is objective morality because
I believe
God is
objective morality.
Yeah. So for the purpose of this conversation, I'll assume that premise as well, just so that we can figure out the standard. Where I'm getting caught up again is how you determine what that standard is. There's the 10 Commandments, but there's not a really comprehensive list of checks and balances that we can refer to say, well, this is deemed moral and this is deemed immoral. Do
you think that's fair to say that we don't have a list? Because I think we do have a list. I would say the Bible provides a lot of information for one, but.
Yes, and I think the 10 Commandments is a great list. And she just automatically dismissed it and think that it's not. For a person that doesn't have an opinion about any of this and is still learning, she certainly got a lot of opinions about the 10 Commandments. What do you think?
I think she knows she's got a strategy, as you pointed out. She wants you to have to basically position your point, and so that she can refute your point rather than she position a point and then you refute her point. So,
right.
So I think that's the burden of proof. I think she's putting it on you.
Yeah.
But I do think even with what Jesus said, if we love our neighbors love the Lord above all else and love your neighbors as yourself. And so that is a standard, and we can look at all the different things that we do. And is that in alignment with that standard?
I brought that up in the actual conversation with Shannon Q. I just didn't say it like that. That's why I brought up the rape issue, and I brought up the rape issue and like cheating on your boyfriend and like loyalty and all that. Like I brought that up for a reason because she was being sneaky in this debate. I wanted to get her to just let everybody know that, okay, you do have objective moral value. Objective moral opinions and values, and you're an absolutist just like I am. You know what I mean? So as we go on in the conversation, you'll see me doing it.
Okay, let's go on. And here's what I'm going to do. I had some timestamps on things that I did want to cover. Like, for example, at 12 minutes and 40 seconds, they're talking about justice a little bit. 16 minutes and 40 seconds, there's a mention of Matt Dillahunty, which I think was kind of a funny thing. 18 minutes and 30 seconds, there's an appeal to axioms. And then at 33 minutes, it said that there's no absolute standard and that we talked about rape there. So should I skip ahead and go to some of these points, or should we
yes, let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay, so let me go to 12 minutes. Wait, where are we here? 12 minutes and 40, so right around here.
All right.
Okay.
That man was in the wrong when he rebelled against God, and that man was wrong for the things that he did after the rebellion. And God is right for judging these people or administering justice when they do anything wrong.
So he was right for administering justice because they deviated from the moral standard. but the justice isn't a part of the moral standard. It's a response to a deviation from the moral standard.
What do you think about that? I would say that justice is part of our moral standard.
I would say the same thing too. I don't know if I said that in the debate, but I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah, so I say, I mean, it's part of those just, in fact, when people would say Jesus reconciled God's perfect justice with his perfect mercy on the cross. And so the idea of justice, that's just part of God.
God's justice and his morality is all attached to his holiness. And as a holy God, God must punish sin. If he doesn't do that, then he's not being holy at this particular point. You know what I mean? So it should be normal to them that if someone does wrong, whether it's something is done morally evil, that there's going to be consequences because of what they did. It makes perfect logical sense. And the things that the way that Shannon Q was trying to twist the conversation, it wasn't doing her any favors. Like I said, we'll get into this a little bit later on in the show.
Okay, I'm going to scooch up to here and go to this.
So things that are essentially victimless crimes, there's different people of religious backgrounds who will appeal to scriptures and say, this is objectively the case because I'm appealing to the scriptures, and others who will say, well, it's not because I can look at this component of the scripture, and they can almost cancel each other out. And that becomes difficult for me to reconcile, because if there's an objective moral standard, it should be apparent. It should be something that's really, really clear if it's objective and it's something that's written on all of our hearts. And it's very clearly not the case to me.
Pause.
So do you think it's clear to?
Oh my Lord!
I mean, do you think
thou shalt not bow down to a graven image? Thou shalt not bow down to a graven image. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. What is she talking about? You know what I mean? It's very clear about what we can and what we can't do when we're talking about God. And I think God was perfectly clear when he was speaking through Moses, and perfectly clear when he was speaking himself on Mount Sinai. As a matter of fact, I even encourage the atheists multiple times on my channel, I think even in this debate, that God has 617 different laws in the Old Testament. You can download them and see how clear and concise they are, and understand how it would affect, the Israelite themselves and the environment around them. You know what I mean? The things that she's saying at this particular point is just hearsay and her own personal opinion that ain't based on anything.
I think one of the things that she even points out is the idea that we all have this written on our hearts. Paul says we have it written in our conscience. And so I think that we all know what the standards are. We know when we're fair and when we're not fair. I mean, and that's I think that's one of the reasons why we're down here on earth, is because God wants us to refine ourselves and try to grow closer to what we know is correct. And so, for example, I think a lot of times why we suffer is because out of suffering, sometimes you become stronger. And out of persecution or perseverance, you actually also strengthen. You become more courageous and more bold. And so there are these different sorts of things that we're trying to get closer to. And I think God's got those set up for all of us.
Our Bible is our basic instructions before leaving Earth. Amen and amen, Esther.
Amen.
Amen and amen. So, I'm sorry, not SJ. Shannon Q had a strategy coming into this, and I think part of it was to play. And I'm not being disrespectful to Shannon Q at all, but I think she was playing a little dumb, again, to try to flip the burden on me, so that she didn't have to prove anything. She wanted to prove that there was no standard to judge God at all. Therefore, why debate? But that doesn't help her, because it doesn't prove that mankind is more moral than God. She loses either way. Let
me ask you this. I've got in the chat here, I've got the chat going on my other computer, and I see a lot of people want to know about rape. I think when she said there's no clear, I think it's pretty clear that rape is wrong. And a lot of people try to pretend like that God is condoning rape or supporting rape in the Bible. But when they pull those particular verses out, there's no such thing even said.
Yeah, and a lot of these atheists, as a matter of fact, actually, the next time you talk to an atheist, just ask them this question: have they read the Bible? Then follow it up with, have you studied the Bible? And then if they give you yes to both questions, go to the Bible, go to a passage that all of us Christians know, and ask them to interpret it for you without going to Google. And 99.9% of the time, they can't do it. What these atheists make the mistake of doing is going to our Bibles, pretending they understand it, giving us the imperfect understanding of a particular verse, and will not take correction when they're corrected about it. I watch your YouTube channel. I see how you're correcting people on your channel all the time. Beckel does it. I do it. Various other Christians do it, but they don't want to accept it because they believe that they're right. You know what I mean? They haven't read it. They haven't studied it, but they believe that their interpretation is correct. And they are strawmanning what the Bible says about rape. And no, God does not force the rape victim to marry their rapist. God forces the rapist, if the father allows it, to care for the woman who was raped. And I mentioned this in this particular in this conversation with Shannon Q.
Yeah, I want to go back to that for a second there, because I think that that's really important point to point out is, number one, this is also something that is no longer the case. The new covenant came about 2,000 years ago. We have a new set of rules basically, and you don't see people being forced to marry their rapist, or even just people whose father had to approve the marriage. So basically, of course, the father had to approve this if this were the case, and that's something. But we have to go back to ancient Israel, where people were incredibly poor. I mean, we look at what it is like today, where there's a booming middle class. Ever since the 1800s, we've started, through capitalism and other things, we've got this huge middle class. But back in those days, the vast majority, 99% of the population was extremely poor, living off of less than $1 a day in today's dollars. So they had no money, no sustenance. And so it was a totally different environment. So
it was a different environment, a different culture, and it was different laws, and it was different rules, and women were viewed differently, relationships were viewed differently. And the number one mistake atheists make, the number one mistake they make, besides going into the Bible talking about this, is the fact that they compare that culture with this culture today, assuming our culture today is all lovey-dovey and it's like perfect and whatnot, and it isn't. You know what I mean? But if they actually look at the culture that existed back then, looked at the poverty, looked at how a woman was cared for and all those things back then, it makes more sense. But they refuse to do that because, you want to know, Ashley, I don't think they really want to know. A lot of them, I ain't gonna say all of them, but a lot of them don't want to know.
That can be. All right, I'm going to start it back up here. Let's see.
Did that make sense? Did I articulate that okay?
Yeah, if I understand what you're saying,
okay.
I'm going to respond this way though.
Sure.
Are you LGBTQ?
Yeah, I'm bisexual.
Okay, great. Do you have any guilt of being LGBTQ? I'm sorry, being LGBTQ.
No, not at all.
Okay. You have no guilt about it whatsoever.
None.
Do you 0%. Do you believe that it is natural what you're doing when you're with the same sex?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just because this is a conversation and not a debate, okay? Both of you have the same sexual organs, okay? And reproduction would be impossible if you two were, to want to have kids or whatever. You're going to have to do something with a man, right?
Or get artificially inseminated, yeah.
But that's not natural. If you have to get artificial insemination, that's something that's done by, unnatural means. In order for
you want to pause on that?
So you better believe it. Pause it.
I got it paused.
If you have to get surgery in order to get pregnant, how exactly is that natural?
Oh, so you mean artificial
nothing
insemination?
Natural about that.
No, that's not
natural.
There's
nothing. Yeah.
But she has a son. I know she mentioned that a little bit later. So she was married before, and she's dating Paula Gia. I don't know if you know that.
No, I don't know who he is. One of these days I'll investigate him. Yeah.
So, and I also didn't know, I actually didn't know that Shannon was bisexual. I had no idea on that, just because she's been dating Paula Gia and she's got a son. And so this part of the conversation is pretty interesting. So, all right, here we go.
But look at the look on Jane's face though when you heard that.
Wait, I didn't see it. Should I rewind? Wait,
rewind it and while she's saying what she's saying, like watch his face. Because he has to be neutral. He can't say anything, but his face tells you 1,000 words. So.
It's very clearly not the case to me from my perspective. Did that make sense? Did I articulate that okay?
Yeah, if I understand what you're saying,
okay.
I'm going to respond this way though.
Sure.
Are you LGBTQ?
Yeah, I'm bisexual.
Okay, great. Do you have any guilt of being LGBTQ? Being LGBTQ.
No, not at all.
Okay. You have no guilt about it whatsoever.
None.
Do you
0%.
believe that do you believe that it is natural
Watch this.
what you're
Yes.
doing when you're with the same sex?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Just because this is a conversation and not a debate. Okay. Both of you have the same sexual organs. Okay. And reproduction would be impossible
Right.
if you two were, to want to have kids or whatever. You're going to have to do something with a man, right?
Or get artificially inseminated.
That's not natural. Yeah, artificial insemination.
James has his most serious
Get
expression.
pregnant by a man.
That's not even a guarantee that I would get pregnant. I could be infertile.
Well, you can be infertile,
Or he could be.
And whether or not it was natural for women to think that mankind can thrive that way would be
I have to say,
well, it's not
So-
prevalent.
James is
That's not what
cracking me
everyone
up. We
does.
should have
I
got
believe
him
that it
in
would be
here.
objectively true, not subjectively. I believe it is objectively true. Heterosexual relationships benefit mankind and will cause us to
So
thrive.
pause.
I'm
So-
sorry, I was laughing over you, and I don't even.
Yeah, pause. Yeah.
I have it paused. People are asking questions in the chat here too, so I should probably stop for a second and look at those.
All right. Yeah, but how can she sit there and say that is natural and she's got to get artificial insemination? Like, seriously. It doesn't matter what they said on Scholar Fiction Channel. I didn't watch it, by the way. I'm probably going to watch it a little bit later. But it doesn't matter what they were saying. If they're trying to say that it's natural and you got to go get surgery in order to get pregnant, there's something really wrong with that line of thinking. You know what I mean? It's crazy. And then James was like, huh?
I know, it's kind of like James wasn't paying attention, and all of a sudden he started listening. Wait, what are they talking about? So that is pretty funny. So let's see. It says, I'm going to look really quickly. Hold on one second. Let me just see. Brian Stevens says, James looks like this 99% of the debate. So hold on.
All right.
Right.
And that's the thing. The atheists are still saying this is a debate, while Shannon Q said this was a discussion. These guys crack me up. I guess it was a debate. I guess to her, but when she said it was a discussion, it stopped being a debate for me, I guess.
So here's a question from Brian Stevens. It says, is it better for a woman to have to marry her rapist, or the rapist in that time to pay the bridal price, and the woman can marry who she wants with the price paid? So if
that's going to be up to the father, because again, the classes of people back then, as SJ mentioned, were very different. The woman depended upon a man to care for them back then. It was not like it is today, where women could be a doctor or a lawyer, or, be able to get a good job and provide for themselves. They had to depend on the man. Now, the kind of women that the man wanted back then, they had to be virgins. They had to be pure. Men preferred pure women back then. Today, but back then men preferred the woman to be pure. If she was not pure, they would be undesirable to marry. And then who would care for her? You understand? So
that was a big part of their culture. You're correct. Absolutely.
Yeah. So if that happened to her, that man, and I believe that guy was totally righteous for doing it. Say, you want to know what? You want to take her virginity? Fine. Now you got to take care of her for the rest of your life. The atheists flip it. They look at it as being a negative, and they're saying, oh my God, look what happened to the rape of the poor girl. God's forcing her to marry him. What kind of a monster would do that, using the objective moral values to do that? You know what I mean? But
I think, you know what I want to add to that? I want to add the point that this whole thing was set up as a deterrent. Because if you are thinking about raping somebody, if you're male and you're thinking about raping somebody, and then you realize, well, wait, if I do rape her, I'm going to have to marry her and be with her for the rest of her life. I'm going to have to support her. I think that would make many of them think twice and say, wait a second, I don't want to do that. And
exactly. So, a lot of men, well, the men back then, a lot of them, I say some of them even today, they just want to get what they want to get for a few seconds, and then that's it. You know what I mean? But to have to give all of your wealth, your fortune, and all, oh no. As a man, nah. Now, you get any man on here, ain't nobody trying to give up their wealth to somebody they don't really want to be with. You know what I mean? So it's a punishment for the man, and it takes care of the rape victim, because now she's cared for the rest of her life. You know what I mean? And the atheists refuse again to look at the culture in order to understand this.
That's part. And I would recommend for anyone to read Paul Copan's book, Is God a Moral Monster? Because he explains a lot of the context from that time, and that helps. And I see Scholar Fiction, by the way, is in the chat, just to mention, because we had talked a little bit about him. Scholar, you wouldn't want to hear that part. No, just kidding.
Well,
Okay.
Skylar, I'll say this about Skylar. How you doing, Skylar? Do you still believe that it's okay for kids to cuss? He knows what I mean by that. He says it on his channel. He said it on my channel a couple of times. He thought it was okay for children to cuss.
Oh, to cuss.
But
Okay.
yeah, but when rubber met the road, he didn't want to actually prove it. You know what I mean? So.
All right, so let me go. I'm going to go to conversation starting at 33 minutes here, because there was something that was said about an absolute standard, and this goes into that rape conversation that you just mentioned a second ago. So let's see.
Yeah, probably.
Your boyfriend, your man might be watching this. Be careful.
Oh, he probably is. No, look, I trust him.
Careful.
Yeah, Paul's probably watching, but I trust him. There's a little bit of ambiguity there for me, because in psychologically or physically abusive relationships, sometimes people kind of reach out and find a partner that's a lifeline that helps them get out of those relationships. And there's some gray area there for me, because that's somebody who's kind of saving them from that relationship. But for the most part,
what about dumping them and then like ending their relationship and then finding somebody?
Oh, I think that's totally fine. If you don't want to be with somebody, you should just go.
Yeah, instead of cheating on them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But that's why I brought up abusive situations, because it's a little bit different in those circumstances.
I believe even in abusive relationships, you should just dump them and then get another person or whatever. You know what I mean? So I believe that is objectively wrong to do that in the Bible.
I think it's case by case.
And what about our parents? We shouldn't
case
never
by case. Okay, mute. Okay, mute.
Okay.
I think I speak for all women, that if a woman does not give you permission, okay, and even if they do, you probably shouldn't do it. You know what I mean? Be faithful to your spouse. And I guarantee you, and she even admits it in this debate or this conversation, whatever you want to call it, that if her boyfriend were to cheat on her, he can get the stepping, because she's not going to tolerate that. Now she tried to go into like an open marriage and permission, and that's a different story and whatnot. But the Bible says that thou should not commit adultery. If you're married to that person, you will want them to be faithful, and that's clear. And this conversation proves that she understands it. But earlier in the discussion, she tried to make the argument that it wasn't clear when it actually is. And you're right, Eshe. God writes His law in our hearts.
She mentioned it. I think what it was is she said that polyamory is okay with her, and she has friends who are polyamorous. And I had just listened to on Steve McRae's channel, I listened to David Silverman get on there, and David Silverman had a polyamorous marriage, and his wife and basically also took advantage of that. And there was a little tryst between his wife and Matt Dillahunty, and then now David Silverman is divorced. So you can see what the outcomes are of those kinds of relationships. I think that it's unhealthy for people to get in the polyamorous relationships. And I think that that's something that will eventually kill any marriage.
Exactly, because we see a few examples of this in the Bible, and it just didn't work out. There's a lot of negativity that happened when that happened in the Bible.
It's true. All right, so should we start up again?
Don't get me wrong, you can disagree with them. You can disagree with your parents. Don't get me wrong.
I'm going to go back to abuse again. Like if your parents are sexually abusing you,
if they're sexually abusing you,
or abusing you,
and you can go to the authorities.
I think you did draw, a lot of times people like to play by the exceptions to the rule. The basic rule is the vast majority of people are born to decent parents who are not abusing them. And it's kind of the idea when people say, for example, that abortion, they try to justify abortion, they'll point to the 1% of people who are products of incest or rape. And it's even actually less than 1% by some polls I've seen. And they ignore the 99% of people. And you mentioned this in this conversation too, about the vast majority are doing abortions out of inconvenience.
Hey, Eshe, let me ask you a question, Eshe. If you believe that the universe happened without God being involved in it, right? And then it expanded, and then the planets were formed, and then through some primordial soup, some lightning hit the water, and then like the first life form came about into it, and then evolution happened from that point on, and they became apes or whatever, and then they became humans. How exactly in that worldview can you make an argument that molesting your children are wrong or being abusive is wrong? How can anything be wrong in that worldview?
That's true. If you look at how animals treat each other, animals kill each other, animals steal from each other, and they're not held to any sort of moral code. So, I mean, people try to talk about, that's something in that view. They say, well, I have seen animals be empathetic towards each other, or an animal help another animal out. That actually only points to God in a way, because why would animals even do that? So it actually points to part of a planet that's overseen by a divine moral lawgiver.
But the question is though, okay, so we see animals being empathetic towards each other and remaining with each other and being like a pack and a family and everything. But why is that right or wrong to a person that believes that they evolved from a rock? you understand what I'm saying? It's like they shouldn't even be talking about this, in my opinion, without admitting that we have to submit to some type of objective moral value. They have to argue that way. When they argue that morality is subjective and coming from that worldview, nothing they say make any sense, because it's all based on their own personal opinion. It's not based on any factual information at all. At all.
So yeah,
you and I can make an argument. You and I can make an argument that molesting children are wrong. You and I can make an argument that that you shouldn't talk to your parents a certain way is wrong. I don't believe an atheist can, because an atheist is only appealing to their own imperfect opinion.
I'm just looking in the chat. I noticed that this thing about kids cussing and Skylar fiction, and I know that you had a conversation with him about that, I think. So
yes.
And you had mentioned a little bit on that. Did you want to expand on that? So basically, you and I are on the same page. That I don't like cussing. I don't like it at all. And I especially don't like to see anyone do it in front of my kids, because I'm trying to keep their little ears clean.
Right.
And so the idea is there are people who think that cussing is a natural part of the language, and they think that that's perfectly acceptable. And it's just the only reason to not have your kids cuss is the social consequences. And I actually would say that's actually not at all the only reason. I just don't think I think it actually lowers someone's level of intelligence. It basically means they can't express themselves properly without cussing. I think that's a problem to me. So, but that's my opinion.
I say it's lazy morality. That's what I say it is, that people just get to a point where they get angry and they don't care about what other people think, and they just lash out. You know what I mean? And universally speaking, because God's law is written on our hearts, you know what I mean? We all understand that is wrong. And what happened with Scholar Fiction was, when he came to my YouTube channel, I challenged him on it, because I said, "Do you believe that cussing is wrong?" He said, "No." And I was like, "Well, do you believe that if your child cussed, that is wrong?" He said, "No, but he won't allow his child to cuss in school because, the consequences at school and whatnot." So I'm like, wait a minute, hold on a minute. But you believe that cussing's okay. So if you want your child to do it, he should be able to do it, right? So I said, okay, fine. Your child's not in school right now, is he? He said, yes. I told him to get his child and put him in front of the camera and put your religion into practice. Show everybody that you don't mind your child doing that. And he wouldn't do it. And instead of actually showing everybody that he really believed those things, he went back to his YouTube channel and said, "Oh, G-Man tried to get my child to curse. What a horrible human being." You know what I mean? So Scholar needs to stop complaining in a live chat and learn how to get more consistent in this conversation. Scholar Fiction is a punching bag for a lot of us, SJ. So I don't even deal with him that much no more.
So, okay. So I'm trying to see what he's saying in here too. So now G-Man is switching the story he said 2 months ago. I don't know. I think what you're saying is, I think you were just trying to be consistent. If your view is that if it's probably better for a child to have a consistent view as far as cussing. So it's either no cussing or yes cussing, but not yet no cussing here and yes cussing there. Because I think that's confusing for a child. So that's just
cussing is wrong across the board, in my opinion.
Yeah, I try to avoid it. Every once in a while I stub a toe though, and some words come out. It's like, oops. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and start it up right around 60, because I had some note on that.
So I'm not really certain that was the answer. Like it was a which scenario do you choose? Do you choose financial support, walk away from rapist, financial support, live with rapist? Which do you choose?
I choose what God said in the scripture.
So you would live with the rapist.
I have no problem with that. So here's the thing now.
I am sorry.
You're saying, wait a minute, Shannon Q, hold on one second. Because
I'm so sorry.
You're probably saying that wouldn't be good according to the scriptures, right?
I don't think that would be
good. Hold on a minute. If it's wrong, then what is it based on? You have to do something better than emotion or appealing to emotion. You got to show me what it's based on.
Okay, so I'm just stopping it for a second because I wanted to point out that
it's time to dig into this one. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, I just wanted to point out the whole idea with if someone chooses, if you're a daughter and for example, if I were raped by somebody and then somebody said, well, you have the option to get married to the guy, I would tell my dad, absolutely not. Don't make me do that. And so,
Right.
but you made a point in here. You actually brought in Bill Gates and you brought in the idea, what if it's a wealthy man or it's something like that? And I think that got some flack, and it definitely got some flack on Twitter with Skylar. So, so just to add that in, one thing I was just trying to point out is, again, it's my view that you're not saying that that's about our culture today. If Bill Gates literally goes out and rapes somebody, or if Jeffrey Epstein, who's just this moral, awful person who now is, he committed suicide. But if you look at people like that, if Bill Gates or just somebody with a ton of wealth goes out and rapes somebody in this society today, I still think we would walk away and say that's absolutely corrupt, put him in jail, that sort of thing, and let's not deal with this anymore. And so I think that you were just trying to give a today example for the ancient culture, and maybe, the equivalent of King Solomon or something like that.
Yes, and there's two things that I want to say about this. Again, Scholar Fiction and Shannon Q and the rest of these atheists are looking at our society today. When we're talking about rape in the Bible, in order to be honest about the conversation, we got to look at ancient Israel and how things were done back then. They don't like to do that, because if they do that, then they have to agree with what we're saying. Okay, it's very rare to find an atheist that will talk. As a matter of fact, if you go to college, for example, and the professor is asking you about ancient culture, he's asking you about ancient culture. He doesn't want to talk about culture today. He wants to talk about how the what do you call them, the Moabites live, how the Canaanites live, how the Israelites live, how the Egyptians live in that particular society. You know what I mean? They didn't have the technology that we have today, so things were done differently back then. And you have to be honest with your professor. Well, when you get into these conversations, you got to be honest too. And when I brought this conversation up, one of the first things that Shannon Q did was she started to appeal to emotion. She was like, oh my God, no, that's just wrong. And she knows that the majority of the audience is going to fall for that. You know what I mean? But when we're looking at this from a logical and rational perspective, we're looking at their society. We're looking at how the woman is cared for back then, what her social status was, and how she was cared for. Now imagine this, SJ. The woman gets raped. She doesn't marry this man. What are the consequences according to the Bible? She may not get a husband. She may have to live out in the street. She may end up going into prostitution. They don't think about that, because they are thinking that they're looking at it from our society today instead of looking at it from the society that was back then. And again, the person that was being punished the person that was being punished in that scenario was not the woman. It was the man, because there was only one other option, that he got stoned to death. Option number 2 is stone him to death. In our society today, what do they do to rapists, Ashay? What do they do? They get
incarcerated.
Slap on the wrist. They get incarcerated for a year or two, for maybe 5 years, depending on the offense. Get a slap on the wrist, you get put in the system, and then they want to be treated like a normal person, right? In the Bible, you got stoned to death. In the Bible, you have to own up to your responsibility, and you have to take care of that person that you violated. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that she has to love him or any of those things. It just means now that he has to care for her. And those atheists like to add a lot of stuff. Yes, they like to add a lot of stuff to the Bible that's just not there. They forget that these same Israelites are under the Mosaic law, something that they really need to go learn how to read one day.
Yeah. So no, you added some clarification, and I think that's good. And she never has to. In the audience, people are saying, does a woman have to marry the rapist? And again,
No.
the idea is no, she doesn't have to marry the rapist.
Right.
This was something that the rapist might have to do, might have to provide for her. So I think that not. And this is not saying that we're going from our lens today and trying to justify rape in any way. Rape in all forms is awful. It's something that none of us support.
Amen.
And so that's something. And I wanted to point out something that you just mentioned about women back in those days, because one of the great things about Christianity and the game changers is that when Jesus came, he elevated women, these women who were, lower status in every case. Jesus was treating them as if they were equals. And he actually had women discover the empty tomb. And I think that's pretty amazing when you really think about it. So he gave women a lot of great treatment. And since
Yes.
Jesus's time, women have been given equal rights. If you look at all Western societies today, women are on the same level as men. We're allowed to vote. We're allowed to drive cars. We're allowed to do all
Right.
these kinds of things. And we're running corporations, running countries. This was not something that you would have seen in ancient times where women were second-class citizens. So Christianity has been a game changer for women. And this, it's just, if you even go back now and look at how it is in some Muslim societies like Afghanistan, women are really being treated in horrific ways there, and they're still doing stonings in some places.
That's right. That's right.
So, all right, so I'm going to zoom ahead to the question session. So we had, I think the questions come in about it.
The trolls. Yeah, the
These
trolls.
get fun. So let's see, here we go. I hit down to an hour 12. That's where to start that. Let's see.
Lay out and figure out what moral standards are and what makes a moral standard and why they're important and how we measure ourselves against them. Most people are really, really busy trying to prove me wrong when I haven't even made any arguments. So I don't know the answer to that question. And I'm not sure that anybody really honestly and truly does know the answer to that question. I think lots of people assert that they do, but when really, really pinned down and you say, okay, what constitutes it? How do we know that it is? How do you determine what that objective standard is? How do you answer these questions? A lot of people make appeals to things that are subjective.
Pause. She believes, first of all, she does have she has a objective opinion about God when it comes to rape and when it comes to adultery, when it comes to things of that nature. Because earlier in this show, we have pointed out how she absolutely believes that God would be wrong for making a law about certain things. Like, for example, according to her, it's the rapist marrying the rape victim being forced to marry their rapist, the way they interpret it. You know what I mean? So she knows full well that she has an idea about how to go about judging these things. Because while she was in this show, she had no problem saying that she had a problem with God, rape in the Bible, and other topics as well. So again, she was playing games this entire debate. Her goal was not to try to prove that man or that people was more moral than God. Her goal was to try to put the burden on me and to try to make me look like I didn't have a way to have that we don't got a way to judge God in his nature. Again, we can make God look at his own nature, and we can see whether or not his nature is contradictory. Alex Botton understands this. You know what I mean? When he had his fundamentally flawed show, he attempted to show this. He failed, but he attempted to do it. Hall Tie Champ and other atheists on here attempts to do that on a regular basis. Matt Dillahunty attempts to do that on a regular basis. So in my opinion, and I'm not being disrespectful to Shannon Q, but I believe that she was playing stupid in this debate a lot.
Yeah, I have to say that I think that Shannon Q actually is very intelligent, as you're pointing out. I think that's the flip way to say that. So
yes.
She's an intelligent woman. She's got a lot of information on psychology. She knows what she does. She knows what she's talking about. A lot of ways.
Right.
So I will add that. So okay, let's go back to this.
It's me right back to, well, you'll say it's objective, but you're using subjective justifications. So why don't you tell me how you determine what is or is not an objective morality without directly appealing to God's nature, without being able to describe God's nature? And then we'll have a chat about what morality is that maybe is productive and not argumentative.
Can I do a follow-up on this, James, if you don't mind?
If I can I definitely give you a chance, but I just want to mention the Jim Tanker actually intercepted this objection from SJ. And he says the answer is increasing flourishing and reducing harm through the mechanism of the veil of ignorance.
Okay, so you and I have had a conversation already about this idea of increasing flourishing. So again, they're trying to ground objective morality in this idea of a goal, which they say is increasing flourishing. Now, increasing flourishing is a subjective goal. So it's a person-limited subjective goal. And so this is not something that works. It's the circular argument. And so I have to just counter that really quickly.
And I want to say this too. What exactly, how do they define what flourishing is? Or, okay, I'll bring up something that I brought up in this conversation with Shannon Q, just to spice this up a little bit again. LGBTQ and their rights here in the United States of America, right? Would society flourish if LGBTQ became a regular thing, and let's say 70 and 80% of the population became LGBTQ? Or would we, or would it harm our society because no one's having any babies anymore? You know what I mean? They have to define what they mean by flourishing. That's subjective in of itself. Shannon Q doesn't know. Anyway, so let's continue.
Well, that goes into Sam Harris's book when he talks about subjective well-being, but he never defines subjective well-being. So
Right.
it's the 300-page book, and it doesn't have a definition of what he exactly is talking about, this construct that he says we're all searching for and we all agree upon. So, okay, here we go.
Respond to that one.
Oh, G-Man's eyes just went like that.
Can I respond to that one? But first, I want to say something to Shannon Q. Shannon Q did say in the beginning of this conversation that she doesn't have a definitive stance on this.
Oh, yeah.
However, Shannon, you do have an opinion about this to a certain degree.
I have opinions
When
for
we
sure.
When we started talking about what the Bible says about the rape issue, and you started talking about it from a human from a human perspective.
Sure.
And while you didn't say it outright, you did kind of explain when you stood on this. You know what I mean? Now,
Yeah, on that individual one, yeah, for sure.
Now, regarding the statement that the individual said about thriving and flourishing, then I'm afraid that the person who made that statement is going to have to drop LGBTQ because there's nothing in that whatsoever that is going to cause any of us to thrive or flourish. That is a horrible argument. Anyway, so let's go on.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. We Vibrant Brantley says beep beep beep. Ocean Kelsoy.
Beep, beep, beep.
November 2019.
Meet.
Next up, stupid horror.
What's happening? What's going on? Where am I?
Stupid horror energy. Thanks for your super chat. She says, "Does Shannon have a long yellow lounge chair, or is that a green screen?"
I'll be right back. Go ahead.
Look at me. I'm on it. Can I get on it? Leaning on it. It's a green screen.
Very nice. Very it's pretty
super
advanced.
Professional, right?
Some pretty advanced effects over there. Jeremy Pace, thanks for your super chat. Let's see. I'll wait until G-Man gets back. I'm gonna try to find another one for Shannon.
I'm back.
You got it.
Nobody
Okay.
wants to talk to me. Fine, guys, whatever. I don't
No,
want to talk to
we
you.
got one
I
from
don't care.
Mitchell. Mitchell just sent one in for you. Jeremy Pace, thanks for your super chat. He says, for G-Man, what is the punishment for raping a virgin, and how is that moral?
What is the punishment for raping a virgin? Well, usually what happened was it was one of two things. You was stoned to death, or you had to actually have to marry the virgin that you raped. And then let me explain again why that, because in case that person wasn't here earlier, again, virginity was a very important thing in ancient Israel, and women depended upon a man to care for them. And if the woman was not a virgin, then they would not be desirable for a man to marry. Okay? So if the man raped her, and he wasn't killed, and then another man came along and said, I want to marry you, but found out that she wasn't a virgin, she would probably be considered a harlot for not telling anybody or anything like that. So a lot of women the women back then were not desirable unless they were married. All right. So it's very moral for God to execute judgment on someone who's breaking the law. You can actually download the 617 laws that are.
And again, if anybody disagrees with this, let's look at the atheist solution. She doesn't got to marry him. Okay, so when you're in ancient Israel, she doesn't marry him. That's not an option no more, right? The father says no. How is this woman provided for? You can't go apply for unemployment. You know what I mean? There ain't going to be a lot of jobs out there for you because this is a totally different society. Okay, you're saying that this man can do this. He should be thrown in jail. And one of the things that I learned from Dr. Ken Hovind, SJ, and I missed it too, that there is no jail in the Mosaic Law. You know what I mean? If you did something wrong, you either had restitution or you were killed. You were eliminated. The evil was purged from the land. So what happened to this?
I didn't know that. I didn't
then?
realize there was no jail back then. I just didn't even think about that. I assumed there was jail.
No jail. There was no jail. This system that we got today is so crooked and evil. It's not even funny. If America had the attitude of just eliminating people, I think people would just think 2, 3, 4, 5 times before doing something. You know what I mean? But yeah, jail doesn't exist there. So what? So how does she get cared for by this? How does she get her justice? Okay, the death penalty is administered to this man. So how is she provided for? Because nobody wants to marry her now. You know what I mean? And atheists are quick to say that something is immoral, but slow. Yeah.
It's
the atheists are very the atheists are very slow to take those things into consideration. You know what I mean? They claim to be the intellectual saviors of the world, but they don't spend a lot of time like really thinking about like that culture and then God's ultimate plan to bring about the Messiah. Let's not forget that. You know what I mean? And the fact that Israel needed to see that they couldn't keep the law if they tried anyway. You know what I mean? But I'll stop there. You can continue, but they needed to hear that, I think.
You make a good point, and the whole thing with the jails, I really honestly had never really thought about that. So that's interesting. So, all right, here we go.
In the Old Testament, and you will see where God is addressing things, and He's talking about the punishment for breaking these laws. We don't call the police immoral, and I said this in this discussion earlier. We don't call the police immoral for arresting people, for writing tickets to people who speed. We don't call the police immoral for arresting people who are murderers. We don't call the government immoral for executing people in capital punishment. It's a silly statement to make.
Gotcha.
Based on nothing.
Next up, thanks for that. And Quasa, forgive me if I mispronounced it. Let me know. They said, thanks for your super chat. They said, I literally disagree on everything he is saying, but considering the notoriety, I admit G-Man is making good conversation so far. Kudos. Oh, snap. Looks like you got a critic out there, G-Man.
Oh yeah, you can get in line with the other 1,500,000 of them. You know.
Mitchell, thanks for your super chat. He said, Shannon, if God is moral or is more immoral than humans, explain why within the past century we've killed more innocent humans by abortion than history combined. Or I think they mean all of history combined prior to in the last century.
Explain. So we would need to establish why abortion was immoral by God's standards. And if we refer back to Numbers where God himself committed an abortion, it would be difficult for me to measure that against God's standards, because by his standards, if you're appealing to that, it would be moral, unless you're going to be using justifications to say why in that instance it was okay.
What do you make of that?
Okay, number one, God did not commit an abortion in the Bible. That is Shannon Q's opinion. That is Shannon Q's opinion. Okay. Number two, when you guys listen to this, I'm talking to Shannon Q, not in a debative manner on this particular topic, but I'm trying to appeal to the way that she argues for once here online. And when you hear what I say, try not to cringe. All right. The bottom line is that God was executing judgment on a person who is potentially unfaithful, okay, to their husband, okay. So there's a difference between someone executing judgment and someone going to an abortion clinic and someone wanting to murder their baby because they don't want to be responsible. The big difference.
I'd like to piggyback on that point, because I think that one of the things that she did here, which was by bringing into the Bible and bringing in something that happened in the Old Testament and trying to sort of turn the tables on the question rather than address the real issue here. The elephant in the room is the fact that millions of people, at least 1 million a year, have an abortion every year in the United States. So there's millions of babies aborted each year in the United States. They've looked at the types of people who are doing abortions, and unfortunately it tends to really hit the minority community, and it really hits the impoverished more. So it's actually something that's very much hurt many of our fellow citizens here in the United States. And another thing, just to mention, again, going back to the idea, I would never say that a person who's raped or who someone commits incest with is, I mean, in that particular case, I want to make it be up to the woman. And that's, again, the 1%. But in the 99% of cases, and then there are some cases where the health of the woman, she's going to die if she gives birth and something like that. Again, very tiny percentage of people. But for the vast majority of these people, they just don't feel that they want to carry the baby to term, even though they could have the option of giving the baby up for adoption if they can't care for the baby after that. And so the baby there's a lot of people who want to adopt kids, and they would probably be very blessed with many of these kids. If you look at Steve Jobs, he was an adopted child. His mother carried him to term and then had him adopted, and look at what he did for the world. He actually, with all of the technology that he brought to us. So there's some wonderful people out there who are adopted or who want to adopt people. And so I hate the fact that people get so involved in this abortion debate, but they don't really think about other options for women.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
And even if you look at Iceland, for example, they're trying to figure out, a lot of people abort babies that have Down syndrome. And so they figured they might be able to actually get rid of Down syndrome in Iceland. And I think that that's heartbreaking. I think that that's just one of those.
There's a lot of people with Down syndrome that are very intelligent and are very good contributors to society. Again, that's atheists practicing their evolutionary perspective of survival of the fittest. You know what I mean? And trying to keep the strongest people here and getting rid of the weak links. You know what I mean? It's a very sick worldview to have.
Well, the whole deal with Down syndrome, that's one that I that hits home for me. My second son he had 2 soft markers for Down syndrome, and they told me I could terminate the pregnancy. And that was the day that I went from pro-choice to pro-life, because I thought to myself, wait a second, they just referred to my son as terminate the pregnancy if he has Down syndrome. Well, it turned out he didn't have Down syndrome, but he, and I had the amniocentesis and found that out a couple of weeks later. But for a while there, I decided, hey, we're still having this baby. This is our son, no matter what his condition is. And so
exactly,
that's just how I feel about that. But okay, so here we go. Let's see what she says.
In which case, then you're applying subjective standards, which gets confusing for me, which is why I think these conversations are important. And instead of challenging what is or isn't moral in these conversations, to say, well, use God's standard. Tell me why we're not more moral than God, because we do this. Okay, well, based on what standard? Because you're appealing to God's morality. I can give you an example of where he seems to deviate from it. Nobody seems to give me a good reason why that's okay. It's just a bunch of talking around it, and then we're right back to subjective interpretive argumentation. And what I want to have these conversations for is to just really get a strong grounding of what is or isn't moral.
Stop. Okay, so pause it.
Oops, I think I did.
Okay. I'm gonna use the term that you used earlier regarding her being intelligent. Okay, I'm not gonna use the stupid word. Okay, she's intelligent. She knows what she's doing. She's trying to dictate the conversation and trying to say that no one's given her a method to go about determining whether or not God is moral or immoral, whether or not man is, well, actually particularly God, right? What was the topic of this debate, SJ?
Whether people are more moral than God.
Right, and as an atheist, she clearly believes that people are more moral than God. So she's trying to go into this, and we already talked about her trying to switch the burden of proof on me and whatnot, right? Has she, in this entire conversation, up until this point, in your opinion, brought up one argument on why man is more moral than God? Just one.
No, actually, she hasn't. I don't think, at least, I mean, we didn't listen to the whole thing here right now for anyone who's joining us who hasn't heard that whole debate, but I don't think she did. Am I
okay,
wrong?
Now what about me? Now, what about me? Did I give her a standard in which we can judge God and we can judge man to see whether or not we're moral? Did I actually do that?
You gave the standard of the Bible, but I think even beyond that, you also just mentioned today in this conversation, I think that was really good with 1 Corinthians 13 and this idea of love is patient, love is kind. So I think that's giving us a really good standard. And you just, the way you said, and it's not man is patient, man wishes he were patient, you know?
Exactly. So when she's making this statement just now, it's very hard to decipher that because there's so much. She's smart enough to know that she hasn't made an argument. So there's really nothing honest about what she's saying right now. She's saying that everything I'm saying is subjective and that no one's provided any way to be able to prove that anything's objective. And it's like, what? You know what I mean? And I think a lot of them, not all of them, not all atheists do this, but a lot of them, when they get in trouble, tend to do that to try to cause confusion to get themselves out of trouble. Shannon Q, if you're watching this, Shannon Q, I know you believe that man is more moral than God. You demonstrated this when you talked about the rape issue, and we talked about the Ten Commandments and things like that and whatnot. All right. What you failed to do in this conversation, Shannon Q, was to be able to tell us why. You had no standard to be able to tell us whether or not man was able to judge God to begin with. And number two, you had no way for us to be able to look at why man is more moral than God. She failed to do all of that. And I don't know what they said in the Scholar Fiction Hangout, but if Scholar didn't point that out to her, it's just atheists agreeing with atheists, and it's just an echo chamber at that point, you know.
I think I can't even imagine trying to make an argument that man is more moral than God, because we're all so flawed. And I know that that's something that atheists don't like to hear Christians saying, oh, you say you're flawed. We're not flawed. Well, we actually are flawed. I mean, let's be honest. All fall short of the glory of God. And so not just one person falls short. So we can't say that we're the standard at all.
What's the opposite of being flawed?
Perfect.
Exactly.
Jesus.
And none of them can claim that they're that. So
none of us. All right, so here we go.
And
can I please?
I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer.
I would like
Maybe we aren't, but how do we know?
I would like to respond to that. I like to respond to that.
If it's like
again,
literally,
Shannon,
literally 30 seconds just to try to get through as many questions. Sorry about that, G-Man. We just got a ton of
I let you answer yours. I just sat here drinking my Coke.
Next up, thanks for your patience, G-Man. Stupid Horde Energy, thanks for your super chat. They said, is God good because his nature has good properties, or are those properties good because God has them?
That's the Euthyphro dilemma. She's trying to rephrase that a little bit. Is God's pious, that sort of thing. And so the idea is it's a false dichotomy, and the third option is God is the standard of goodness. And so that's basically what that person's trying to ask. I just want to point that out.
Okay.
So Jim told he convinced Shannon.
So are we gonna listen to some more? Or are we? Okay.
I think that she was trying. I think she was trying to say. Also, Jim told me he convinced Shannon to do this topless. I think it's because they can't see your shirt. Ha ha.
Oh, I'm wearing a shirt. No, I don't know how you have me framed. I can only see Zoom, but I'm wearing a shirt. Can you only see my hair?
Yeah, pretty much.
G-Man can attest that I am in fact wearing a shirt. It's actually Digital Hammurabi's shirt. It says "Y'all need a nana."
Her laugh is so annoying.
wearing a shirt. Yeah, both is my answer. My answer is both.
Let's see. Next up, thanks so much. Maynard says she's wearing a shirt. Maynard says thanks for your super chat. They said Drake's gonna have a heyday with this. Are you friends with Drake? I saw he was on your stream, G-Man. You guys were like chatting it up tonight. You seem like you're friends.
No, I'm not friends with Dragnut. Me and Dragnut were just talking about whether or not atheists support the New World Order. That was it.
Oh, Drag's my designated hugger.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, next, also somebody asked me to ask you, G-Man. Loki, thanks for reminding me to ask G-Man. Is it true there's a G-cat? Like, do you have a G-cat that looks strikingly like you? Is this a joke or is it for real?
I think it's a joke. I have some animals that debunk evolution on my YouTube channel and they talk, but you know, I don't have a G-cat.
There's no cat that wears a ball cap like you.
I think the ball cap was photoshopped on.
Yeah.
I've been duped. Okay, thanks. Quasa, thanks for your super chat. They said I take it back. Jay Shy, thanks for your super chat. Sorry, I'm trying to fly through these as fast as possible. They said if God is immoral, then why did he create morality?
Solid, I guess. Question.
Let's see. The Jim Tanker, thanks for your super chat. They said, G-Man, any morality given by God, by a being or God, is subjective by definition. The only truly objective moral system is secular morality. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it, G-Man. What do you think?
Okay, you want to comment on that? I know you commented. The only morality is secular. Well, let's just point out what happened in the last century. If we have Russia, the USSR at the time, and also China, and also Cambodia, 3 countries run in secular societies, and over 120 million people perished under that secular leadership. And so that's just something to point out, to stick in the pipe.
Exactly, exactly. Joseph Stalin, Mao, you know what I mean, and all the people that was killed because of these atheist dictators, and they want that all over again, apparently. So
I mean, even
I
if we
don't
go
know.
back to Nietzsche pointed out how dangerous it could be going into society that's not, if people don't feel like there's an external source of accountability, all kinds of crazy things can happen. And that's one of the things that I was reading about one point in the USSR. Prison guards, when they don't feel like they're being held morally accountable, they would do some really egregious things to some of the people who are in those prisons.
Right, right.
So,
Totally agree. And then, things like churches that get sacked, private property would be stolen and given to the public, and people would be killed, and there'll be nothing wrong with it because, there's no God, like exactly what happened in Joseph Stalin's Russia.
it's true. It's true. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll listen to what you said here when he asks.
Think of that.
I think they need to leave the drugs alone. That's what I think they need to do. That's my answer. That they need to leave the crack cocaine alone.
Where does it say you can't do drugs in the Bible, G-Man?
Okay, what does it say about drugs in the Bible? We don't mention specific drugs in the Bible, but it certainly talks about too much alcohol, too much drink. It's the same idea, really. So you don't want to overdo any of this kind of stuff. Think that's fair, G-Man?
I think that's fair, but I would take it a step further. I believe that if a person is using crack or LSD, those things are used to alter your perception. I mean, just like if you drink too much alcohol, and one could make an argument that that's witchcraft, that's a form of sorcery.
Oh, that's an interesting argument. I think you did say that, actually, now that I think about it. So, okay, let's go to that.
Drugs would be considered witchcraft in the Bible, so no, we're not supposed to be doing them. Yes, it's considered witchcraft.
Stop it.
Yes, it's considered witchcraft.
I could talk to you all day. This is bananas. Go ahead. Sorry, James. Go ahead.
I want to point out something really quickly that just reminds me of that. I always want to convince my kids. I have a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old never to do drugs. And so I always find these pictures, and I with things with smoking too, because a lot of kids are now using those Juul cigarettes, those e-cigarettes. And my kids have told me they're seeing those in the high schools. And so what I do is I find these pictures online. And so even in my classroom, the college classroom, I didn't want them doing crystal meth. So I said, look up meth mouth, and they didn't want to look it up. So I typed in meth mouth and put this picture of these teeth. Like, I'm like, you will never do that stuff if you just look at these pictures.
Exactly.
So look up meth mouth, anyone here, if you want to see how awful that looks. So you will never do drugs.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm bumping this up just to keep Shannon engaged. And I want to we'll wrap up really soon. Sorry. Caustic Soda, thanks for your super chat. They said,
hi.
They said, Shan, I believe objective morality can be demonstrated easily, but I admire your honesty. Is multiple partners morally okay or just a sexual preference?
Oh, I think it's morally okay, so long as everybody's consensual and everything's out in the open. Absolutely. I have no issue with polyamory. I have friends who are in polyamorous relationships and they're completely contented and happy.
Gotcha.
So long as it's consensual.
I hope your boyfriend is not watching.
I'm not. You didn't. I'm guessing you didn't hear the part where I said it's consensual and open. I do not consent.
All right.
If he wants a polyamorous relationship, that's fine. He can go have one. I won't be a part of it.
Gotcha. Okay. Anyway.
Shannon puts the hammer down. That's pretty funny. Apologies.
You're gonna be faithful to me. You're gonna be faithful to me.
Yeah, they're perfectly happy over they polyamorous. However, you, I think that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Next up, the Holy Spackle. Thanks for your super chat. They said cuss words or being forced to live with your rapist. Which is more immoral?
Both of them are wrong because sin is sin, and Spackle should know that.
You said it was wrong.
Cussing.
And being forced to live with your rapist.
Well, again, okay, I didn't hear that one right. Let me correct myself. No, that was a legit mistake. Okay, cussing is wrong, but again, Holy Spackle, who's supposed to be a Christian, is adding to the Bible at this particular point. She should know that was a punishment, not for the woman, but is a punishment for the man who humbled her.
Pause it.
If you
Pause it.
There you go.
Pause it. Yeah, there's a YouTuber there's somebody on YouTube by the name of the Holy Spackle on YouTube that likes to appeal to a lot of atheistic arguments when it comes to morality. She openly admits that she believes that God has done a lot of questionably wrong things in the Bible. She openly admits this, and she's an enemy of fundamentalism in Christianity. All right, she's openly admitted this in Google Hangouts. All right, she argued that it is wrong to make a rape victim marry their rapist. Who is the one who gave Israel the law? God was the one who gave her the law. The Bible tells us in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, that we're supposed to offer our bodies as a living sacrifice and have our minds renewed. We're supposed to think like God. So if God puts a law out there, we're supposed to agree with God. We're supposed to be abiding in him and him abiding with us. I talked about this yesterday on my YouTube channel. And the very fact that Holy Spackle would even bring it up that way shows that she's not appealing to the things of God. She's appealing to the things of man. Again, for those of you who are just now watching this, different society, people who are living differently, classes were different. The woman depended upon a man to comfort, to take care of them. If they were not virgins, they would not get married most of the time. They would probably end up in prostitution. Okay, they wouldn't be able to find a job like they find today. Okay, so by having the person who raped the woman have to take all of his wealth to provide for her, doesn't mean that she got to that she's got to give herself over to him or whatever. It just means that he has to provide for her. The father could say no, and he can be stoned to death. You know what I mean? So that was the other alternative. So a lot of these atheists, as well as some of these Christians that are listening to atheists a little bit too much, they really need to take time out to read what the Bible actually says. They really need to do that, because until they do, they're going to keep appealing to these cleverly twisted arguments by the atheist community.
I see a question in the chat coming in from Brian Stevens, and he said, if God made a law today that women were to marry their rapists, I'd like to just highlight the fact that God has already given us the eternal law in the new covenant, and there's nothing in there that says about marrying a rapist. And so that is something that was just present in ancient Israel. It's not something that we endorse today, and so it's not something God's going to do. He already gave us the new covenant.
Hey, Eshe, actually, a rapist, the rapist would be burned alive into the lake of fire in the second death if he doesn't repent. You know what I mean? And they have a problem with that. You know what I mean? They have a problem with everything that's in the Bible. And again, you notice they keep saying, oh, the poor woman that was raped is being forced to marry where are they getting this from? Again, it was a law against the person who raped the woman. If they actually read the text, it says that the man who actually raped the woman has to marry her and take care of her for the rest of his life. And guess what? He can't divorce her. That man is still under the Mosaic law. That means he can't have a side woman. He can't get involved with somebody else until that relationship is over. That woman will be provided for the rest of her life. You notice that the atheists keep saying that, oh, the woman who was raped, you know what I mean, has to marry the rapist, the woman that was raped. They're only looking at it from her perspective. They're not even being intellectually honest by looking at both parties that are involved and the society that's involved. And that's why you'll hear me say a lot, Shay, on YouTube. You'll probably hear the atheists tell you that I do this. I regularly call the atheists on here biblically illiterate, and they don't need to be talking about the Bible because they don't know what they're talking about. They really don't.
Let me actually, speaking of atheists that you call, and you mentioned before, and I didn't even jump on this when you did say it, but you said you've called Atheist Experience 4 times.
Experience?
So yeah, Matt Dillahunty. You called his show?
Oh yeah. I called the Atheist Experience at least 4 or 5 times. Yeah.
So what's a couple of highlights? Now I called once and I'll never call again because he hung up on me and I made a fool of myself. And so it's just not going to happen because I was really kind of amped up about my point about the early Christian martyrs and how come they were so brave. And so I won't do that again. So, but I want to go to yours. Do you have any highlights or anything you'd like to share? Because I've never heard you talk on there and I actually think I'm going to have to go dig up some videos now.
Okay. Can I have about 5 minutes to talk about this though?
Sure.
It's gonna be kind of hard to do it in just a minute. Okay, cool. The very first time I called the Atheist Experience, I was supposed to call the show and talk to them about whether or not there was any evidence for the existence of God. But Matt Dillahunty heard about me and actually came to my YouTube channel and left a comment on there. And we had a bit of a disagreement about like slavery in the Bible. So when I called the atheist experience the first time, he wanted to talk about that. He didn't want to talk about whether or not God existed. So when I called the first time, me and him had a disagreement about like the whole slave issue, and he hung the phone up on me. So I had the same experience as you had, except I don't say that I did that. The second time I called, I specifically called him about the slave issue, and I had a $300 challenge, SJ, challenging any atheist on YouTube to show me when Matt Dillahunty refuted me in that call. Not one time could an atheist show me where I've been refuted. As a matter of fact, the Christians that responded to the call that I did, they said that the only person that did any refuting it was me. Then I openly challenged Matt Dillahunty to a debate on the topic of slavery and morality. Matt Dillahunty keeps making excuse after excuse after excuse. He even responded to one of my videos, SJ.
Did he really?
Oh yeah. He went to another country. He went to Australia and talked about me.
Are you serious?
I got to show you the video one day that this guy was obsessed for a little bit. Then he made another video after the atheist experience in his car saying, I got the man to admit that he was never a Christian. I got him to admit that. So I called again, and then I wanted to talk about how they knew that a God existed, and I refused to talk about the God of the Bible. I just brought up a pagan God or whatever. And I said that they were suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. They thought I was trolling. But I showed them that there was tangible evidence that a God did exist, just to mess with them. And then the last time I called them to talk to them about whether or not God existed, but I never got the chance to actually form the argument. So I have a lot of experience with Matt Dillahunty. Matt seems to only want to debate people where he fully understands the person's position and if they have a traditional argument for the existence of God. I don't have a traditional argument for the existence of God, and I don't use traditional argumentation with him. Okay, and I've been challenging this man. The atheists have been making excuses for him, but you'll be surprised, SJ. I have a lot of atheists that are on my side that thinks that Matt Dillahunty is a bit of a coward for not wanting to debate me on the topic of slavery, because I don't believe the man knows what he's talking about. As a matter of fact, the man gets a lot of things. When I called the show, I had to apologize to his audience, SJ. You'll see the call when I get it to you. I had to apologize to his audience because his audience, I'm sorry, he made a mistake about an instance in the Bible. I said, I apologize, guys. Matt Dillahunty doesn't know what he's talking about, yada, yada, yada. And what ended up happening was I wanted to hang up the phone. He wouldn't let me. He kept me on a little bit longer just so he could hang the phone up on me. I have a lot of history with Matt Dillahunty, a lot.
Wow. Now, if you call him again, can you tell me you're going to call him so I can listen in time? That sounds like
definitely.
An interesting conversation. Now, if anyone's listening, Matt Dillahunty, if anyone knows Matt Dillahunty, I know Shannon, if she does happen to listen to this, she knows Matt Dillahunty. If she would let him know that again, you're putting that challenge out, you're asking to debate him on slavery, I think that would be an excellent debate to watch.
You know what, Shannon? I'm sorry, not Shannon, Stephanie. SJ, I'm sorry.
Oh, you can call me Stephanie. That's fine.
Okay, cool. I apologize. So SJ.
Oh, no. It says Stephanie right on the screen. So we're
now he's not going to accept the debate on slavery, because I think Matt deep down inside knows that he's debating a black man on this topic. He's debating a man who says that biblical slavery that was practiced by the Israelites was not immoral. And I know how to properly divide the transatlantic slave trade from what was in the Bible. You know what I mean? He don't want no part of that. That's why he don't want to debate me, because he keeps saying that it's immoral and that it's immoral and that it's immoral. But guess what I did in one of those calls, SJ? And I'm going to make sure you get the link to it. I said to him, what about the prison system? Is that moral? And he said it was. He said it was. And I said, that ain't nothing but modern day slavery today. You know what I mean? And his arguments are all over the place. So if Matt accepts this debate, a lot of atheists have already expressed the desire to see that debate. And that video that he responded to me on, SJ, that video, I'm not sure if it's the case now, was the second best video on his YouTube channel. Now get this, he had Aaron Raw on his channel, he had Christina Rad on his channel, he had a bunch of really high level people on his channel. I'm supposed to be the bottom of the barrel, but at the time that video had the second most, and this is after Christina Rad, Aaron Raw, and all these other people was on his channel. I had the second most views on his YouTube channel than anybody else. That man knows full well the entire YouTube wants to see that debate, and he keeps making excuses for it.
Well, let's go back to that. That's really interesting. Now, how many, when you say it's a lot of people viewed it, how many people have viewed it about? Like,
More than 100,000, if I'm not mistaken. I think since then, I can check
Wow.
if you want.
No, that's
But
okay. Now, there's a video with me that has about 400,000 views, by the way. That one that I said that's super embarrassing. But anyway.
you mean
So
on the
that's-
atheist experience?
Yeah, I called once in 2016. So I'm talking 3.5 years ago. I called, and I can't live it down. It's unfortunate.
If this would make you feel better, I made a rap called Atheist Owned, and I couldn't even stay on beat when I started doing it. And the Drunken Peasants got a hold of it, and they got a video on YouTube that's got 1 million views. So,
Oh my
and they're
gosh.
laughing at me. All of them are laughing at me because of it. But you want to know what? Hey, as long as we get noticed, who cares? You know what I mean?
Well, it's all a lot of fun. I mean, we're just trying to do the right thing, and sometimes it comes across another way. But
Right.
okay,
But I
I'm gonna go
appreciate
back
your
to
humility, though, Esha. I do appreciate your humility with you admitting that. And now, mind you, I haven't seen your call. I'm gonna make it my point. I'm gonna make it my business.
no, don't. Here's the clincher. Okay, so after I basically was talking about how what I did the argument from ignorance, because I basically said, what else could it be? I was talking about why the early Christian disciples were so brave and why they put up with the persecution, and because they believed Jesus rise from the dead. And so I was going on with that, and then he said something like, I'm wasting his time, and I said, of course I'm wasting your time. I don't know why I said that. It was terrible. And then he hung up on me. That's what I got to deal with.
I want to see that. Make sure you give me the link when this is over. Give me the link. I gotta see that.
I'll get you the link.
I gotta see that.
It's
I gotta
terrible.
see that. Oh, God. I gotta see that. I gotta see that.
You laugh.
You gotta laugh at stuff
and people
like
are like,
that.
why didn't you call back? No, I'm not calling back. That's a one-time thing. Now he has me blocked. He has me blocked on Twitter. He doesn't want to. He actually got in there and commented on a video on a blog that I made that said 10 reasons to believe in God. He made a comment, and then I went to write back to him, and he had already blocked me. So
You'll notice a pattern with Matt. Matt will block anybody that presents a challenge to him. That's anybody that presents a challenge to him. He wants to. If you watch the Atheist Experience, you got people that call that show that don't really know what they're talking about, or they're very weak in their Christianity. They might be babies. They might not have been saved that long. Don't have a local church or whatever. He likes talking to them. He doesn't like to talk to people that challenges him. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I'm really looking forward to. I'm actually gonna. If you want to send any links to his stuff, I'll put it in the description too, so I can. In case anyone wants to get a kick out of the one that you mentioned that you thought was pretty good. So, okay.
All right, cool.
Here we go.
Actually download the law and show you what the law says, who's in violation, and who would be the one that's actually being punished at this point. But again, you're looking at it from our society today, and you're not looking at it from ancient Israel. So to me, that's just intellectually designed. That's Holy Spackle, as usual.
Gotcha.
Hi, Holy Spackle.
Hi, Holy
Of
Spackle.
course, the world's gonna love his own. The world's gonna love his own. Okay.
Puffalopagus, thanks for your question, or I should say debate challenge. G-Man, they're coming at you. Puffalopagus said, I'll take G-Man up on that debate.
What debate?
I'm not sure. Let me quick find out.
I don't know what debate he's talking about.
So sorry. Forgive me, Puff. But let me know. I'll keep an eye out. Subtracted, thanks for your super chat. They said, how does a supernatural being have a nature?
What kind of question is that? I don't even know how to answer something like that. Okay, it's really easy. He exists outside of time and space. He has a personality, and through his personality, he has a nature. What kind of question is that?
Gotcha.
Fair one.
Thank you
Try
very
it
much.
again.
I think the person who was asking that was trying to imply that the use of the word nature, and he was referring to maybe it being is in the natural, but that's not what you're saying when you say nature. You're basically, just like you mentioned with personality, you're talking about the characteristics of this person. So
Right.
Gotcha. Stupid horror energy. Thanks for your super chat. They said, is God unable or unwilling to prevent child abuse?
As God is unwilling or unable. God allows sin to destroy sin, and God allows sin to expose sin. If people were living according to the way, and this is what you see in these scenarios, if people were living the way they were supposed to be living according to God's standard, these things wouldn't exist. That's
There'd be no need for justice.
Again, I already addressed that earlier in this. And again, and by the way, Shannon, that's not an argument for human beings being more moral.
It's not an argument. It's a question. Like,
but are you like aware of this entire conversation? You haven't built like one thing yet.
Yes.
I'm trying to figure out what objective moral standard is. Are you aware during this entire conversation you didn't establish an absolute moral standard?
I did not establish.
Yeah, I think you did establish it.
Pause. Okay, pause. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
Got it.
Okay, can you hear me, SJ?
I sure can.
All right, cool. So that was an argument that she was making. She's trying to make an argument that because God's justice and his morality are separate, that somehow makes some type of point that she's making. You know what I mean? It's not a question. That's her passive aggressive nature. She's not the only person that knows psychology on here. You know what I mean? She's trying to put everything on me and trying to subconsciously say because somehow that God's justice and his morality is separate, then that means that man is more moral than God. Of course, that doesn't make any sense, but that's what she's trying to do. I think Shannon Q is a horrible debater, if you ask me.
Well, I want to go back to.
But I'm definitely going to say she's a horrible debater.
I want to go back to what you said with justice being separate for a second there, because she said earlier in the conversation, she said that God had to bring justice in, to handle humans who were making mistakes. But you pointed out also earlier in the conversation that there's also another dimension of angels and that sort of thing. And we've of course got the story of the fallen angels and God's justice then. So it's our beliefs that justice is part and parcel to his very nature, to what he is. He's the standard of justice against which we judge justice. So, gee, man, I might have lost you here for a second there. I'm going to put this play again.
God's nature was his moral standard. I did not tell you to use the 10 Commandments. Come on,
you
now.
did, but then you couldn't demonstrate how we determine.
Yes,
aside from saying Bible, you couldn't demonstrate how we determine what the absolute standard was, unless we give justifications and interpretations. So you provided justifications and interpretations.
That is a cheap cop out. And passive aggressive.
I'm so sorry.
You told me I could go to bed, James.
I know. I want to just cry. I'm so sorry. If I can just read through these, and for the speakers, if you're, unless there's something you really, really want to respond to, there's not too many more. Thanks for your patience. I owe you, Shan. Taliesin Oberlander said,
I do.
You owe Shannon.
I'm tired.
What about my patience?
No, it's not about patience, G-Man. It's because I asked to finish at 11:30 my time because it's quarter to 12 now, and I have to work in the morning and my son's asleep and I have to get up and get him ready for school. So he's apologizing to me because we've gone over the time, not because I had to deal with you or whatever. You had to be patient with you because you had to be patient with me too. I'm intensely antagonistic. I understand.
Okay.
She's like 100 hours ahead of us, G-Man. So Taliesin Oberlander.
It's a quarter. It's actually a quarter to 11 where I'm at. So I don't know where she's at. I'm in East Coast time.
Oh,
I'm in Atlanta, Canada. So yeah, I'm just an hour ahead of you.
Taliesin Oberlander, thanks for your super chat. They said, are absent fathers worse than unbelievers? Occult Nino, thanks for your super chat. They said both debaters' favorite color.
Purple.
Blue.
Nice. Marty Cameo, thanks for your super chat. They said, G-Man, I'm bisexual or infertile and married to a man. Is that natural? Yes or no, G-Man?
Oh. No.
Converse Contender, thanks for your super chat. This is hard to when we constrain it to one word. They said, non-believers think they know our Bible better. LOL. I think they're laughing at you, Shannon. How do you like them apples? Thanks for your...
Did I say that?
All
right, sure.
Jeremy Pace, thanks for your super chat.
Can we mute for a moment?
Sure.
Can we mute for a moment, SJ?
Oh, yes, I got that.
Yeah. So actually, I've been reading the live chat here. You got a guy in the live chat named Brian Stevens, and he says Jim Majors. No, that ain't it. He says
I haven't been able to see all of these.
Yeah, this one says Jim Majors, S.J. Thompson has been letting G-Man slide on calling Shannon stupid earlier on and putting down the LGBT community. First of all, she hasn't been letting me slide on anything. She politely referred to Shannon Q as being intelligent. That's number one. All right, and then I agree with her, and then we moved on. And I've been trying to stop using the word stupid since then. All right. Number two, Brian is saying that on calling Shannon stupid and then early on and putting down the LGBT community. SJ, you're a Christian, right? SJ, just like I am, right?
I am. And I don't think, see, I think you were just saying that the LGBT community, if it were 70% of the population, that would impact the idea of people having kids. And I think that that's a fair statement. That wasn't meant to put down that community at all. It was just saying that they can't procreate the way that a married couple that's a male and female can.
So my question for what's his name? Brian Stevens, I think his name is. How is that putting down the LGBT community? You know, and that's not a question directed towards you, SJ. That's a question directed towards the gentleman on live chat who said that.
Okay, so Brian, if you want to clarify that, we're looking at. I haven't been able to catch all the live chat comments because I was watching the screen here. So watching one screen, and I've got the live chat on my side here. So I didn't, but I'm looking at it now to see if I see anything. They can still have kids. No, they can't have kids with each other though. But they can certainly do things if they want to have kids. I know they can adopt kids in many cases. So I think that's one thing that maybe Brian's saying here. So
right, artificial insemination is not natural, and they know that. They just don't want to admit it.
Well, that's with a female can go and do that, but two males would not be able to have that kind of an option. So it's just, you were just pointing out the sheer information that we all realize that of course that's true. It wasn't to be derogatory towards that community. It was just basically pointing out that they can't procreate the way that a married couple that's heterogeneous or heterosexual, I'm sorry, heterosexual would be able to. So okay. So should I hit this last? We got another minute left here of Shannon and you. So let's just see.
Your rapist moral. And Brian Stevens, thanks for your super chat. They said capital
punishment. Gonna rip his blinds down.
Brian Stevens, thanks for your super chat. They said capital punishment is immoral. G-Man is wrong. QED. What does QED mean? Is that like a pet name?
So you don't need me no more, right? I can go now.
No, too cool for school over here. Shannon's willing to wait. Come on, cut me some slack, G-Man. Jay Shy, thanks for your super chat. They said, if God is immoral, no moral, how create morality? Padme the Cot said, tell G-Man that G-Cat owes me $5 and call me. Thanks for that. G-Man, come on, laugh with me. Roy Lindsay.
I'm laughing, but this is at this particular point, you know, I'm like, because Shannon ain't the only one who got to work tomorrow.
This is the very last one. They just sent it in. Roy Lindsay said, daily reminder, God isn't real. Thanks for your objections, everybody. If G-Man, or actually SJ's having an after show, so you may get to hear from SJ on these super chats in terms of what she thinks, as well as the discussion as a whole. Thank you guys so much for being here. It's been a true pleasure. Thanks to Shannon and G-Man and for their patience tonight. By the way, we started late because of G-Man. Okay, so anyway, it was a joke. Okay, all right. So everybody have a good night. Thanks so much. Take care.
Okay, so that that brings us back. I'm going to just stop the sharing there. So trying to go back to my other screen so I can see what I'm doing here. So G-Man, do you have any other comments or thoughts? Hey, wait, am I?
Okay, that was SJ asking me that. Okay, all right. All right. So SJ, I noticed that. Hold on. Okay, can you hear me, SJ?
Yes.
Okay, great. I noticed that you have 950. You do not have enough subscribers on your YouTube channel. You really don't. Why are they resisting so much? If you guys are watching this, and you guys need to subscribe to this YouTube channel. You guys watch me all the time, and it'd be good to listen to someone else's perspective and someone else's point of view. And I'm sure SJ is a lot nicer than I am. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'm sure SJ would love to have a conversation with a lot of you in the chat. Subscribe to this channel.
I would.
Share. Yeah, share the video with your friends. And SJ, you got my word on this. Later on today, I'm going to promote this video. I'm going to go on my own channel, my main account, and I'm going to tell all the Christians to come over in real time to subscribe to your YouTube channel, because this is a travesty. And as soon as you actually get 1,000 subscribers, you'll be able to do super chats. You'll be able to, like, YouTube will actually start sharing your stuff more. So you only need about 85 more subscribers. I'm going to see to it that you get it.
Oh, thank you, G man. I've been trying
Yep.
to I've been trying to grow my channel for so long, and it's just I get like one a day, maybe. So I'm lucky. So I appreciate that.
I want to share some information with you about how to like market your channel a little bit better. But we'll do that off air because I don't want the atheists to know my tricks.
Your tricks.
Yeah.
If you have some good tricks. Well, let me say thank you to everybody who's in the audience. I see some really nice people in there who's saying pretty nice things. So I like the things that I'm seeing. And so thank you so much for coming by. And please like and subscribe, as G-Man mentioned. And please go to G-Man's channel too. I'm going to go ahead and connect links to that so that everyone can go over there and also subscribe there if you're not yet. And so you can hear more of him from that.
I think Jim Majors wants me to come to his channel. I think.
Oh, and Jim Majors is in the chat. So Jim, did you want G-Man to come to your channel? I'll see if he answers that. And so.
Okay, he's a mod on your channel, I see too.
Yeah, and I'm going to make you a mod if you get in here, if you put something in the chat. I don't
Okay,
know
I'll do it right now. I'll do it right now. Hold on. I'll do it right now. I love being a mod because I make people behave. I make people behave when I'm a mod. They're not allowed to go in the comment section that I'm in and just say whatever they want. And that you can't do that.
I just made, oh, there you are. Okay, so I will make you a mod too. Okay.
I don't know if it was Brian Stevens or Jim Majors, but one of them want me on their YouTube channel. They claim I won't go on there. No, I will go to just about anybody's YouTube channel if I'm asked. So.
Yeah, that would be fun to watch. And I'll definitely, so Jim, if you, oh yeah, he does want you. Jim wants you on his channel. He says, heck yeah.
Yeah, I'll come to Jim Majors' channel. I got no problem with that. But Jim, you're going to have to promote SJ's channel as a consequence of it. So.
Oh, he's pretty good about, actually, Jim's been pretty good about that. I'll try to promote Jim's channel too. So, and I don't think Brian has a channel. I could be wrong though, but I don't think that's going on. So yes, we will be keeping live debates going from 2020 onwards. If anyone wants to get into a debate or wants G-Man to come in back on my channel or wants to go on his channel or any of these other channels, then feel free to let us know. And we'd love to chat with a lot of you. And so,
and actually, I would love to get you on my channel one day. Actually, I would love to get you on my channel.
Oh, I'll gladly go on your channel.
I just got to find a topic to talk about because atheism is not the only thing I deal with on my main channel. But if you want to talk about anything else other than that deals with apologetics or the Bible, I will definitely get you on and we can talk about it.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to. Yeah, and I like talking about apologetics, and I would like to talk about biblical prophecies on your channel if you want.
Oh, cool. We can do that. I absolutely love that. That's my first love. And then the gospel is my second. It's messed up, but it's true.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, because I mean, there's so many. And just in case of people who haven't heard any of those, so we have, go read Daniel 9, Isaiah 53, Psalm 22, Zechariah 12:10. I think you'll enjoy what you read.
Exactly, exactly. SJ, you've always been a good host for me. Thank you for letting me come on your channel again.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. So thank you, everybody, for showing up. Here we go.
Read your Bible and do what it says.